Welcome to my channel SB Quotes. It is so easy to overestimate the importance of one defining moment and underestimating the value of making small improvements on a daily basis. I know that if things were going to improve, I was the one responsible for making it happen. In the messy world of a college dorm, I made it a point to keep my room neat and tidy. These improvements were minor, but they gave me a sense of control over my life. A habit is a routine or behavior that is performed regularly and, in many cases, automatically. I accumulated small but consistent habits that ultimately led to results that were unimaginable when I started. Changes that seem small and unimportant at first will compound into remarkable results if you're willing to stick with them for years. In the long run, the quality of our lives often depends on the quality of our habits. With the same habits, you'll end up with the same results. But with better habits, anything is possible. It was gradual evolution, a long series of small wins and tiny breakthroughs. The only way I made progress, the only choice I had, was to start small. I had never considered myself a mastery of a topic, but rather someone who was experimenting alongside my readers. If you can get 1% better each day for 1 year, you'll end up 37 times better by the time you're done. What starts as a small win or a minor setback accumulates into something much more. Habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. The same way that money multiplies through interest. Habits seem to make little difference on any given day, and yet the impact they deliver over the months and years can be enormous. It is only when looking back 2, 5, or perhaps 10 years that the value of good habits and the cost of bad ones become strikingly apparent. We often dismiss small changes because they don't seem to matter very much in the moment. We make a few changes, but the results never seem to come quickly, and so we slide back into our previous routines. When we repeat 1% errors, day after day, by replicating poor decisions, duplicating tiny mistakes, and rationalizing little excuses, our small choices compound into toxic results. A slight change in your daily habits can guide your life to a very different destination. Success is the product of daily habits, not once-in-a-lifetime transformation. What matters is whether your habits are putting you on the path toward success. You should be far more concerned with your current trajectory than with your current results. If you want to predict where you'll end up in life, all you have to do is follow the curve of tiny gains or tiny losses, and see how your daily choices will compound 10 or 20 years down the line. Time magnifies the margin between success and failure. It will multiply whatever you feed it. Good habits make time your ally. Bad habits make time your enemy. Habits are a double-edged sword. Bad habits can cut you down just as easily as good habits can build you up. The more tasks you can handle without thinking, the more your brain is free to focus on other areas. Learning one new idea won't make you a genius, but a commitment to lifelong learning can be transformative. Bamboo can barely be seen for the first 5 years as it builds extensive root systems underground before exploding 90 feet into the air within 6 weeks. Habits often appear to make no difference until you cross a critical threshold and unlock a new level of performance. In the early and middle stages of any quest, there is often a valley of disappointment. It's a hallmark of any compounding process. The most powerful outcomes are delayed. All big things come from small beginnings. The seed of every habit is a single, tiny decision. I began to realize that my results had very little to do with the goals I set and nearly everything to do with the systems I followed. If you want better results, then forget about setting goals. Focus on your system instead. Goals are good for setting a direction, but systems are best for making progress. A handful of problems arise when you spend too much time thinking about your goals and not enough time designing your system. If successful and unsuccessful people share the same goals, then the goal cannot be what differentiates the winners from the losers. It was only when they implemented a system of continuous small improvements that they achieved a different outcome. Fix the inputs and the outputs will fix themselves. It is unlikely that your actual path through life will match the exact journey you had in mind when you set out. When you fall in love with the process rather than the end product, you don't have to wait to give yourself permission to be happy. The purpose of setting goals is to win the game. The purpose of building systems is to continue playing the game. True long-term thinking is goalless thinking. Ultimately, it is your commitment to the process that will determine your progress. Bad habits repeat themselves again and again not because you don't want to change, but because you have the wrong system for change. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. The ultimate form of intrinsic motivation is when a habit becomes part of your identity. It's one thing to say I'm the type of person who wants this. It's something very different to say I'm the type of person who is this. Behind every system of actions are a system of belief. It is hard to change your habits if you never change the underlying beliefs that led to your past behavior. The more pride you have in a particular aspect of your identity, the more motivated you'll be to maintain the habits associated with it. Once your pride gets involved, you'll fight tooth and nail to maintain your habits. Improvements are only temporary until they become part of who you are. Good habits can make rational sense, but if they conflict with your identity, you will fail to put them into action. You are not born with your present beliefs. Every belief, including those about yourself, is learned and conditioned through experience. Your habits are how you embody your identity. I didn't start out as a writer. I became one through my habits. In this way, the process of building habits is actually the process of becoming yourself. Small habits can make a meaningful difference by providing evidence of a new identity. The most practical way to change who you are is to change what you do. If you keep casting the same votes you've always cast, you're going to get the same results you've always had. Your habits shape your identity, and your identity shapes your habits. It's a two-way street. The focus should always be on becoming that type of person, not getting a particular outcome. You need to know who you want to be. Otherwise, your quest for change is like a boat without a rudder. You have the power to change your beliefs about yourself. Your identity is not set in stone. You have a choice in every moment. Building better habits isn't about littering your day with life hacks. Fundamentally, habits are not about having something. They are about becoming someone. It's only by making the fundamentals of life easier, through habits, that you can create the mental space needed for free thinking and creativity. The primary reason the brain remembers the past is to better predict what will work in the future. Habits reduce cognitive load and free up mental capacity, so you can allocate your attention to other tasks. Habits do not restrict freedom. They create it. People who don't have their habits handled are often the ones with the least amount of freedom. Building habits in the present allows you to do more of what you want in the future. The purpose of every habit is to solve the problems you face with as little energy and effort as possible. By the time we become adults, we rarely notice the habits that are running our lives. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. With enough practice, you can pick up on the cues that predict certain outcomes without consciously thinking about it. We underestimate how much our brains and bodies can do without thinking. You are much more than your conscious self. The more automatic a behavior becomes, the less likely we are to consciously think about it. We're so used to doing what we've always done that we don't stop to question whether it's the right thing to do at all. One of our greatest challenges in changing habits is maintaining awareness of what we are actually doing. All habits serve you in some way, even the bad ones, which is why you repeat them. The first step to changing bad habits is to be on the lookout for them. The process of behavior change always starts with awareness. You need to be aware of your habits before you can change them. People who make a specific plan for when and where they will perform a new habits are more likely to follow through. Many people think they lack motivation when what they really lack is clarity. We often say yes to little requests because we are not clear enough about what we need to be doing instead. No behavior happens in isolation. Each action becomes a cue that triggers the next behavior. People often choose products not because of what they are, but because of where they are. Your habits change depending on the room you are in and the cues in front of you. Environment is the invisible hand that shapes human behavior. Customers will occasionally buy products not because they want them but because of how they are presented to them. A small change in what you see can lead to big shift in what you do. If you want to make a habit a big part of your life, make the cue a big part of your environment. Be the designer of your world and not merely the consumer of it. A stable environment where everything has a place and a purpose is an environment where habits can easily form. Small changes in context can lead to large changes in behavior over time. Addictions could spontaneously dissolve if there was a radical change in the environment. The people with the best self-control are typically the ones who need to use it the least. It's easier to practice self-restraint when you don't have to use it very often. Here's the punchline: you can break a habit, but you're unlikely to forget it. In the long run, we become a product of the environment we live in. I have never seen someone consistently stick to positive habits in a negative environment. One of the most practical ways to eliminate a bad habit is to reduce exposure to the cue that causes it. This is the secret to self-control. Make the cues of your good habits obvious and the cues of your bad habits invisible. If history serve as a guide, the opportunities of the future will be more attractive than those of today. While it is not possible to transform every habit into a supernormal stimulus, we can make any habit more enticing. Without dopamine, desire died. And without desire, action stopped. Dopamine released not only when you experience pleasure, but also when you anticipate it. When dopamine rises, so does your motivation to act. It is the anticipation of a reward, not the fulfillment of it, that gets us to take action. We need to make our habits attractive because it is the expectation of a rewarding experience that motivates to act in the first place. The more attractive an opportunity is, the more likely it is to become habit-forming. In the long history of humankind, those who learn to collaborate and improvise most effectively have prevailed. A genius is not born, but is educated and trained. We don't choose our earliest habits, we imitate them. If you work in a job where everyone wears expensive suits, then you'll be inclined to splurge on one as well. Behaviors are attractive when they help us fit in. I find that I often imitate the behavior of those around me without realizing it. The closer we are to someone, the more likely we are to imitate some of their habits. Peer pressure is bad only if you're surrounded by bad influences. One of the most effective things you can do to build better habits is to join a culture where your desired behavior is the normal behavior. Your culture sets your expectation for what is normal. Surround yourself with people who have the habits you want to have yourself. You'll rise together. Remaining part of a group after achieving a goal is crucial to maintaining your habits. It is friendship and community that embed a new identity and help behaviors last over the long run. Whenever we are unsure how to act, we look to the group to guide our behavior. The normal behavior of the tribe often overpowers the desired behavior of the individual. Most days, we'd rather be wrong with the crowd than be right by ourselves. Many of our daily habits are imitations of people we admire. The culture we live in determines which behaviors are attractive to us. It is emotion that allows you to mark things as good, bad, or indifferent. If you no longer expect smoking to bring you any benefits, you have no reason to smoke. Your habits are modern-day solutions to ancient desires. New versions of old vices. Your current habits are not necessarily the best way to solve the problems you face. They are just the methods you learn to use. Habits are about associations. These associations determine whether we predict a habit to be worth repeating or not. Life feels reactive, but it is actually predictive. The cause of your habits is actually the prediction that precedes them. Desire is the difference between where you are now and where you want to be in the future. It is emotion that allows you to mark things as good, bad, or indifferent. Living below your current means increases your future means. Distraction is a good thing because you need distractions to practice meditation. In practice, it doesn't really matter how long it takes for a habit to become automatic. What matters is that you take the actions you need to take to make progress. If I outline 20 ideas for articles I want to write, that's motion. If I actually sit down and write an article, that's action. Sometimes motion is useful, but it will never produce an outcome by itself. We do it because motion allows us to feel like we're making progress without running the risk of failure. It's easy to be in motion and convince yourself that you're making progress. Motion makes you feel like you're getting things done. But really, you're just preparing to get something done. When preparation becomes a form of procrastination, you need to change something. If you want to master a habit, the key is to start with repetition, not perfection. You don't need to map out every feature of a new habit. You just need to practice it. Both common sense and scientific evidence agree, repetition is a form of change. This means that simply putting in your reps is one of the most critical steps you can take to encoding a new habit. The most effective form of learning is practice, not planning. Conventional wisdom holds that motivation is the key to habit change. Maybe if you really wanted it, you'd actually do it. But the truth is, our real motivation is to be lazy and to do what is convenient. When deciding between two similar options, people will naturally gravitate toward the option that requires the least amount of work. The more energy required, the less likely it is to occur. You don't actually want the habit itself. What you really want is the outcome the habits delivers. If you can make your good habits more convenient, you're more likely to follow through on them. The idea is to make it as easy as possible in the moment to do things that pay off in the long run. Trying to pump up your motivation to stick with a hard habit is like trying to force water through a bent hose. The central idea is to create an environment where doing the right thing is as easy as possible. Redesign your life so the actions that matter most are also the actions that are easiest to do. Each day is made up of many moments, but it is really a few habitual choices that determine the path you take. Even when you know you should start small, it's easy to start too big. When you dream about making change, excitement inevitably takes over and you end up trying to do too much too soon. When you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do. Your goal might be to run a marathon, but your gateway habit is to put on your running shoes. But the point is not to do one thing. The point is to master the habit of showing up. If you can't learn the basic skill of showing up, then you have little hope of mastering the finer details. Instead of trying to engineer a perfect habit from the start, do the easy thing on a more consistent basis. You have to standardize before you can optimize. You can't improve a habit that doesn't exist. But one push-up is better than not exercising. It's better to do less than you hope than to do nothing at all. Habits can be completed in a few seconds but continue to impact your behavior for minutes or hours afterward. Sometimes success is less about making good habits easy and more about making bad habits hard. The best way to break a bad habit is to make it impractical to do. Using technology to automate your habits is the most reliable and effective way to guarantee the right behavior. It almost always happens that when the immediate consequence is favorable, the later consequences are disastrous, and vice versa. Often, the sweeter the first fruit of a habit, the bitterer are its later fruits. The problem isn't knowledge. The problem was consistency. Pleasure teaches your brain that a behavior is worth remembering and repeating. Conversely, if an experience is not satisfying, we have little reason to repeat it. What is rewarded is repeated. What is punished is avoided. Positive emotions cultivate habits. Negative emotions destroy them. The world has changed much in recent years, but human nature has changed little. With our bad habits, the immediate outcome usually feels good, but the ultimate outcome feels bad. With good habits, it is the reverse. The costs of your good habits are in the present. The costs of your bad habits are in the future. The more immediate pleasure you get from an action, the more strongly you should question whether it aligns with your long-term goals. The more a habit becomes part of your life, the less you need outside encouragement to follow through. Incentives can start a habit. Identity sustains a habit. A habit needs to be enjoyable for it to last. Change is easy when it is enjoyable. To get a habit to stick, you need to feel immediately successful, even if it's in a small way. The most effective form of motivation is progress. Each small win feeds your desire. Focus on the process rather than the results. No matter how consistent you are with your habits, it is inevitable that life will interrupt you at some point. I try to remind myself of a simple rule: never miss twice. Missing one workout happens, but I'm not going to miss 2 in a row. I can't be perfect, but I can avoid a second lapse. The first mistake is never the one that ruins you. It is the spiral of repeated mistakes that follows. Missing once is an accident. Missing twice is the start of a new habit. The problem is not slipping up, the problem is thinking that if you can't do something perfectly, then you shouldn't do it at all. Lost days hurt you more than successful days help you. Sluggish days and bad workouts maintain the compound gains you accrued from previous good days. Simply doing something, 10 squats, 5 sprints, a push-up, anything really, is huge. It's not always about what happens during the workout. It's about being the type of person who doesn't miss workouts. It's easy to train when you feel good, but it's crucial to show up when you don't feel like it, even if you do less than you hope. Going to the gym for 5 minutes may not improve your performance, but it reaffirms your identity. The more immediate and more costly a mistake is, the faster you will learn from it. We repeat bad habits because they serve us in some way, and that makes them hard to abandon. We'll jump through a lot of hoops to avoid a little bit of immediate pain. To be productive, the cost of procrastination must be greater than the cost of action. Behavior only shifts if the punishment is painful enough and reliably enforced. Knowing that someone else is watching you can be a powerful motivator. The secret to maximizing your odds of success is to choose the right field of competition. Our environment determines the suitability of our genes and the utility of your natural talents. The people at the top of any competitive field are not only well-trained, they are also well-suited to the task. If you want to be truly great, selecting the right place to focus is crucial. Genes do not determine your destiny, they determine your areas of opportunity. Our deeply rooted preferences make certain behaviors easier for some people than for others. You don't have to build the habits that everyone tells you to build. Choose the habit that best suits you, not the one that is the most popular. In theory, you can enjoy almost anything. In practice, you are more likely to enjoy the things that come easily to you. Pick the right habits and progress is easy. Pick the wrong habit and life is a struggle. When a habit is easy, you are more likely to be successful. When you are successful, you are more likely to feel satisfied. At some point, you need to make sure you're playing the right game for your skill set. The work that hurts you less than it hurts others is the work you were made to do. When you can't win by being better, you can win by being different. Even if you're not the most naturally gifted, you can often win by being the best in a very narrow category. A good player works hard to win the game everyone else is playing. A great player creates a new game that favors their strengths and avoid their weaknesses. If you find a more favorable environment, you can transform the situation from one where the odds are against you to one where they are in your favor. Our genes do not eliminate the need for hard work. They clarify it. They tell us what to work hard on. People get so caught up in the fact that they have limits that they rarely exert the effort required to get close to them. Genes can't make you successful if you're not doing the work. Until you work as hard as those you admire, don't explain away their success as luck. The human brain loves a challenge, but only if it is within an optimal zone of difficulty. You need to regularly search for challenges that push you to your edge while continuing to make enough progress to stay motivated. Behaviors need to remain novel in order for them to stay attractive and satisfying. Without variety, we get bored. And boredom is perhaps the greatest villain on the quest for self-improvement. At some point it comes down to who can handle the boredom of training every day, doing the same lifts over and over. The difference, in successful people, is that they still find a way to show up despite the feelings of boredom. The greatest threat to success is not failure but boredom. You just need enough winning to experience satisfaction and just enough wanting to experience desire. At some point, everyone faces the same challenge on the journey to self-improvement. You have to fall in love with boredom. I can guarantee that if you manage to start a habit, there will be days when you feel like quitting. Professionals stick to the schedule, amateurs let life get in the way. Professionals take action even when the mood isn't right. They might not enjoy it, but they find a way to put the reps in. There have been a lot of sets that I haven't felt like finishing, but I've never regretted doing the workout. The only way to become excellent is to be endlessly fascinated by doing the same thing over and over. You have to fall in love with boredom. Habits deliver numerous benefits, but the downside is that they can lock us into our previous patterns of thinking and acting, even when the world around us is shifting. Habits create the foundation for mastery. Each chunk of information that is memorized opens up the mental space for more effortful thinking. The downside of habits is that you get used to doing things a certain way and stop paying attention to little errors. The less energy you spend on trivial choices, the more you can spend it on what really matters. You can't repeat the same things blindly and expect to become exceptional. Without reflection, we can make excuses, create rationalizations, and lie to ourselves. Improvements is not just about learning habits, it's about fine-tuning them. You don't want to keep practicing a habit if it becomes ineffective. The tighter we cling to an identity, the harder it becomes to grow beyond it. Everything is impermanent. Life is constantly changing, so you need to periodically check in to see if your old habits and beliefs are still serving you. A lack of self-awareness is poison. Reflection and review is the antidote. The holy grail of habit change is not a single 1% improvement, but 1,000 of them. Success is not a goal to reach or a final line to cross. It is a system to improve, an endless process to refine. The secret to getting results that last is to never stop making improvements. It's remarkable what you can build if you just don't stop. Small habits don't add up. They compound. That's the power of atomic habits. Tiny changes. Remarkable results. Thanks so much for your watching. God bless you.